Well, 4 Arcanas down and 20 to go. I'm really happy with the first part, and I'm even more ecstatic from the feedback and discussion that came about in the comments. I love hearing what y'all think about this, so keep the discussions going. And also, please keep it civil. Roll the intro! Okay, part 2. Y'all hopefully already know my criteria, but in case you're watching these videos out of order, here they are. Visual design, voice lines, spell effects, lore, and animation. I give each aspect of the Arcana a ranking out of 10, which will average out to an overall score. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get started with the first Arcana of the video. Spectre. This is undoubtedly one of the best visually designed Arcanas ever. Easily top 3. It's consistent with Spectre's shape language, it gives her an all-new color scheme of bluish grays and deep violets. It reflects her tank-ish role in the game far better than default Spectre. It's nigh flawless. I love the idea that if you look at this Arcana head-on, everything seems to be held together well and orderly. But if you look at it from the back, it reveals how everything is chaotic and crumbling. The purple tatters that follow her can't even remain a consistent shape. Her unkempt hair trails behind her as if it were a ghostly fire, and her shoulder armor is eternally falling apart, decaying, but never changing. It does a wonderful job at communicating that this entity is having a tough time staying as one whole. Everything just wants to break apart and descend into ambiguity. But you wouldn't ascertain all that by just looking at the grim visage of the ghost, who's ready to cut you open. 10 out of 10. This Arcana is unique in that Spectre's voice lines will sound distorted and chaotic at level 1, but as she levels up, her voice achieves a higher clarity. The fact that her voice lines change throughout the game is unique to this Arcana alone. Even outside of that aspect, these voice lines are just oozing with personality. Her laugh is just straight up unsettling to listen to. It's so perfect. And her interactions with other heroes do an amazing job at conveying that Spectre is far more than a wandering phantom, but an unstoppable force of nature. Listening to these invokes the sense that Spectre has become death itself.
Back to dust. Nothing but a parasite. Nothing is your price.
Props to Jin Hammond for delivering an amazing Arcana voiceover once again. And also a big thanks for those who wrote the voice lines and implemented such an amazing effect for her voice. 10 out of 10. First off, I really like the spectral dagger effect. You don't see this detail during gameplay, but when you use this ability, the trail it leaves starts emanating this phantomic steam. The edges of the path also fade to a darker shade, letting you know that the path is gonna decay soon. It's a bit of a pay-to-win feature if you ask me, but it's not that big. Anyways, the trail effect could be more noticeable. On default Spectre, it's very obvious when you get hit by this thing because of the dark trail you leave behind. But on this one, it's definitely more subtle, and I don't admire how it affects the gameplay. The effect on Desolate isn't all that flashy, and the animation on the floating knives is just broken at the moment. The dispersion effect doesn't change much from default, it just gives it a color change. The effect on Shadow Step and Haunt, however, is awesome. And I know these technically aren't spell effects, but the custom item and kill effects are super neat. The kill effect itself gives some cryptic hint into the lore of the Arcana, and the effects on Radiance and Blade Mail are perfect. The one gripe I have with it is the Shard ability. It's the same effect as default, and just... what is this? Why is it broken? It's just a fly in the ointment. 8 out of 10. Alright baby, here's the good stuff. For those that don't know, Spectre is an entity of mysterious origin that's attracted to conflict like a magnet to metal. Her mind is fractured and her form is incorporeal, and every time she enters the physical plane to pursue combat, she experiences some sort of identity loss. And the only time she can truly focus is in combat. And outside of that, she's just a collection of ghostly wills haunting about the world, seeking to be whole. The lore of this arcana builds on this idea and opens up even more possibilities for her character in the future. It's explained that some random phantom of Spectre was lured by a suit of armor for one reason or another, and caught by its curse. She struggled with this at first, trying to rage against her enrapturement, but it was all for naught. Through her attraction to battle, she found that with every spirit she consumed, not only did the armor grow stronger, but the confidence in her identity also grew. Each slain foe resulted in mental clarity, and she hungered for every last drop of it, fully deviating from the true Spectre and sculpting her own self. Alright, first things first, we know that Spectre's haunts have wills of their own and can make an identity of their own instead of rejoining with the collective. Secondly, the relationship between the armor and herself is beneficial for both parties. It makes me wonder who made this armor, who was it made for? The fact that it managed to attach itself to a ghost makes me think it has something to do with Spiritbreaker's hidden master, or on the other hand, the theme of mist and the spell effects lean towards the House of Avernus having involvement. We most likely won't get an answer, but this lore makes the reader ask so many questions, and that's what I really, really dig. 10 out of 10. The set of animations that comes with this arcana doesn't go as far as I think it could. Most of these could be grafted to Spectre's default model and not much would change. Spectral Dagger, Shadow Step, and Haunt have animations that aren't really all that special. The floating daggers that follow her do most of the heavy lifting in the animation department. I will say the channeling and teleporting animations are quite unique. They really delve into the idea that this is a haunted set of armor, and I wish this concept was better illustrated in her other animations. Maybe have the reality animation split apart the armor and come together at the target. Or for Spectral Dagger, maybe have one of the blades follow her actually leave the model and follow the target. There's a lot that the animation leaves to be desired, and it's the one flaw keeping it from total perfection. 7 out of 10. This one earns a fat 9 out of 10. It's almost perfect. The animation is really the only spot that needs a bit of improvement, and I really wish I had the money to spend when this thing came out, because it's one of the only modern arcanas that I don't currently have. And with that down and done, we move on to the next hero. Wheel, take it away. Faceless Void. This arcana's design is a mixed bag for me. It's a high quality model, don't get me wrong, but it suffers from the same problem that the Zeus arcana had. It feels like Faceless Void plus. Now, before I dive into that, I know this arcana is supposed to be a bit of a callback to Void's Warcraft 3 model. The tentacles on the hand and face communicate this clearly. However, this looks like Valve took all the features that made up Faceless Void and turned them up to 11. And while I do think that this is a problem, I don't think it's as much of a problem here. The tentacles on the head and back and hand add some nice unique elements. This character has always been inspired by Lovecraftian mythos, and here it's exemplified tenfold. It's bordering on being a potential remodel. Like, remove the tentacles on the back and this could be a genuine remodel for Faceless Void. By the way, I'm surprised it stuck to the hero's original color scheme. That's not something you see in modern arcanas a lot, but I think the lack of a color change is justified for lore reasons. The hollowness of his body is a really cool detail that I'll dive into in the lore section, since it says a lot about Faceless Void as a character. Also, this is just a personal gripe, but I really wish they ditched the mouth and made him actually faceless. A bit disappointing. 7 out of 10. Hey, also, why is there so much model clipping going on? It's honestly worthy of me docking a point, but I'm feeling merciful today. I have pretty mixed feelings about this arcana's voice lines, too. A bit of lore here, but this guy has absorbed a decent chunk of power from a god beyond time. This act gave him tentacles all over his body and most likely revealed forbidden knowledge to him that most lesser beings would potentially mentally explode over. And you're telling me all this didn't phase Void in the slightest? I was really hoping for some unhinged rendition of this character, full of insane ramblings and unsettling, otherworldly screams. But no, instead we have a Faceless Void who's full of himself despite the desperate position he's put himself into.
Your suffering will last however long I please. None will kill Kaz but me. Wasted your precious time.
Apparently he was just ready to take on the essence of an eldritch god, even though he's pretty much a speck to this deity. I mean, he pretty much made himself a slave in the pursuit of power, but he acts all high and mighty towards everyone else. You know, on further thought, maybe this whole thing did make him delusional after all. The The voice work is good, Dave Fennoy performs as always, I just wish they took his voice lines in a different direction. 7 out of 10. The spell effects on display here fit with the Arcana very well. Every single one has tentacles featured, except for the item effects. Also, Time Zone has no effect, which is kinda dumb. But to be fair, nobody uses this thing. Speaking of item effects, that's where I have a bit of a problem. The color choice for the Mask of Madness effect is too pinkish. It needs some darker tones to fit Void's color scheme, because this magenta flame just sticks out like a sore thumb. Even in gameplay, it's quite noticeable. Outside of that, this is a very decent set of effects. 8 out of 10. I have a few problems with the lore of this Arcana, but we'll start with the good stuff first. And firstly, it finally explains Void as a character rather than just saying, oh, he's a mysterious guy and we don't know why he's here, like in his default lore. In this Arcana, he realized that being an acolyte of Claws meant giving up your life to sustain the Eldritch deity himself, losing his life in the process. So, in response, he started scheming his way out of this debacle using other, less knowledgeable acolytes to further his goal and ultimately challenge Claws in the future. This resulted in a ritual in which Void stole some of Claws' power, as seen in his hollow back, and is now being hunted by Claws. As a result of this, Faithless Void has to kill others to feed Claws instead of himself, like some Hellraiser-type chicanery. If he doesn't do this, Claws will feast upon him and Void will become part of his infinite expanse. A few things I noticed right out of the gate with this story. 1, it takes place in a realm outside of time. Time is not a force in Claw's-Ream, yet this story that occurs in it has a distinct beginning, middle, and end. Or an implied end at least, which requires the passage of time to actually happen. The logistics of this don't make much sense, but on the other hand, what exactly was Valve going to do? They couldn't exactly retcon the absence of time in Claw's-Ream, as that would conflict with Faithless Void's dialogue and existing lore and all that. It would just make it one big mess. Anyways, the next thing I noticed. Faithless Void is revealed to be desperate and self-centered. He doesn't seem to care about what happens to the other acolytes that helped him achieve his goal, nor does he really foresee the eventual madness he's causing himself by either constantly murdering people or succumbing to Claws. Death is constantly after this guy, but out of spite he keeps running away. In a way, he becomes Claws, the very thing he swore to destroy. Think about it. He constantly needs to kill to stay alive. He's manipulated a bunch of people into helping him that he doesn't care about, and he is ultimately uncaring for any that cross his path. Who's to say Claws isn't doing the same thing, and feeding another, even more powerful deity? I really like how it frames Void as this cocky freak who hides his dire situation from others, except Void Spirit, who he shares this openly with.
Even now, Claws tries to consume me, but I will not submit.
Really cool lore, with the one problem that it takes place in a realm where time doesn't exist. 9 out of 10. There's a bit of a disconnect between the voice lines and the animations in this Arcana. I've already mentioned how his voice lines make him sound confident and in control, but you really wouldn't get that out of his animations. The way he moves around and flexes his tentacles give off a more feral vibe. His combat stance is hunched over, with his hands spread out and his back tentacles all aflutter. It's like he's an animal trying to make himself look big. The animations for Time Violation and Chronosphere are also really fun and definitely an upgrade from default. I will say that the teleportation animation follows this trend of disconnect. In the animation, he's on his knee, as if showing reverence. Meanwhile, his voice lines when teleporting tell you that he's anything but happy about using it.
A little moment on my higher path. Better than calling it a favor. The beggar's path.
One additional thing before I rank this, though, I really enjoy the fact that activating Mask of Madness makes his face tentacles go all crazy. Very neat, very cool, but the animation could still use some better consistency with his established personality. 7 out of 10. Overall, this Arcana earns a 7.5 out of 10 for me. Despite being a modern Arcana, it is painfully average. I enjoy the lore, but I kind of wish they took his personality in a different direction. Yeah. You know, I'm starting to notice that the modern Arcanas take up way more time than the older ones. Anyways, with Void out of the way, let's get on to our next Arcana. Juggernaut. Everything below the neck of this Arcana is just a Dire Tide costume for Juggernaut. Also, the amount of different particle effects here is just flat out unnecessary. First, there's the flame that goes from blue to orange, then there's the mane that fades in and out, and then you have these rocks that ascend from the mask and shrink into nothing. On top of that, you have these swirling green lights, and finally you have these other green particles just rising up from Juggernaut's body. Alright, you can't forget about the dragon just flying around everywhere now and then. My goodness, is this cluttered. It's one big tub of teal vomit that really ruins the cool design of the split mask. 4 out of 10. Hey, also, where did his finger go? Valve, in their limitless resources, managed to get Samoa Joe to voice this Arcana.
The Isle of Masks will rise again. Together we will find a way to bring back our people. Juggernaut!
Just a shame that his part of the voice lines don't even work anymore. The voice filter for the default voice lines works just fine, but no matter what I did, I could not get the actual new voice lines to proc. I don't know how they were broken at some point, but they just don't show up. It's a shame, really. The voice acting we got on the wiki is really nice, and Samoa Joe did a great job bringing the spirits inside the mask to life. Just wish it actually appeared in-game. 8 out of 10. A lot of the spell effects in this Arcana don't make any drastic changes. Most of it is just the regular spell with a color change and a dragon flying around. The more impressive bit is the kill insignia and the sound effect that goes along with it. Quick Slash and Healing Ward have no effect, but Healing Ward at least gets a new icon. Overall, the spell effects leave a lot to be desired. 5 out of 10. The lore of this Arcana is iconic, but not as substantial as other Arcanas that came before or after it. Sven split open Jug's mask, and the ancestral spirits living in the mask were freed and merged into one mind with Juggernaut. It doesn't change his motive or change the trajectory of his story. It's nice that it gives him a link to another hero, but it feels milquetoast at best. 5 out of 10. This Arcana is starved of animation. Through testing, I only found 4 new animations. Those being the teleport animation, the out-of-combat walk cycle, the in-combat walk cycle, and this post-kill animation. Everything else is exactly like default Jug. This is just unacceptable. Even though the animations are quality, there's not enough substance. The Techies Arcana has more unique animations than this. I'm baffled by the lack of new animations. And for an Arcana that was released in 2017, it's kinda sad. 3 out of 10. Overall, this Arcana really disappoints, especially for a hero that's essentially the face of the game and is quite popular among the player base. It gets a 5 out of 10 from me. Alright, one last hero before we close it out. Let's see who we got. Queen of Pain. I think Valve did a great job with the Co-op Arcana, and not for the obvious reasons. The composition of this character design goes hard, and let me tell you why. When you look at this Arcana, you think about what pops out right at you. That's right, the eyes. Looking at this Arcana, everything about it is drawing you towards her eyes. Down her torso, there's this yellow line that expands as it goes up, pulling you towards her face, and the contrast of that deep blue on her red skin makes it even more attention-grabbing. And what this does is create an environment of safety. Look at the aggressive red compared to the soft blue in your eyes. It's trying to draw you in. Also keep in mind how her organized, clean, and spotless clothing contrasts the chaotic look of her wings. These protrusions of evil with sharp spikes on the end frame the rest of her more appealing body. It's almost like a siren. She's inviting, wearing revealing clothing, only for her wings to reveal the true evil nature behind the facade. For a succubus, this design rocks. Valve could have taken the easy way out and made this Arcana as mindlessly appealing as possible. And they didn't. I'm so glad this is the design we got. 10 out of 10. Across all 47 minutes of new voice lines, the delivery is amazing and consistent across the board. Linda K. Morris did a fantastic job encapsulating her character, and the writers gave her some amazing dialogue to work with. However, whatever filter they used is just ear-bleeding at some points. Whenever there's an S sound or a TH sound, it's just ear-grating. I had to tune down the volume while editing because of how loud it is.
Sometimes you just need to stretch your wings. As you can see, I could do this all day. So much sweeter with Scepter.
Ugh. 7 out of 10. For a spellcaster character, you'd expect this Arcana to have a full set of spell effects, wouldn't you? But alas, the only spell effects that have changed are Blink and Sonic Wave. Shadow Strike, Scream of Pain, and the Blink Shard effect have no changes. It's such a shame. Even the sound design of Blink and Sonic Wave are amazing. Just imagine if the other two spells got something. And I know, there are 2 other immortals that provide spell effects for these spells. But what's even more egregious is that the icon and the effect for the Scream of Pain immortal matches with the Arcana, as if Valve not only expects you to buy the Arcana, but also purchase the spell effect that was clearly designed for it separately. I'm willing to give Valve the benefit of the doubt here though. This was released during the pandemic. Maybe the development of this Arcana was affected and they couldn't make spell effects for her other 2 spells, which, hey, I can excuse it. It still doesn't stop me from giving this a 6 out of 10. Queen of Pain's lore has always been a bit lazy. It's never explained why she enjoys bringing pain to other people, it's just that she likes doing it. It could be something she needs to do, like, we need to eat. It could be because of some trauma she encountered in her younger years. It could be anything, but we're never told. And when I look at this Arcana for an explanation, we get a decent motive. She's not taken seriously. Shadow Fiend, Underlord, even her own brother laugh and mock her because she doesn't have the influence that they do. And so how does she channel this? By bringing pain to others, having full control over them. She wants to prove them all wrong for stomping on her aspirations, and so she seeks what power feels like through the medium of pain. The fact that she can make others scream in agony under her control alleviates this helpless feeling she has while living in the shadow of her brother. And so now, after years of being seen as nothing but that off-kilter sister to Bakor, she finally is going to do something substantial about it. And so she manipulated a demon lord out of his powers, inherited his nobility, and now works to overthrow the court of Verstool, of which her brother, Shadow Fiend, and Underlord are a part of. It's really nice that she has some complete story, but it still is pretty basic all things considered. 7 out of 10. This was the first Arcana to have a separate animation for attacking near and far away from an enemy. Neat! Anyways, this Arcana really shines in the spell animations. The new ones for all 3 abilities are very satisfying. I say all 3 because Scream of Pain has no distinct animation, which is kinda strange. Every single one of her other spells have satisfying, flowing animations, but her E is still this little quick jump. Still, the animations we got are really good, and one upset like this isn't gonna dock that many points. 8 out of 10. The last Arcana of this episode gets a 7.5 out of 10 from me. The visual design absolutely rocks, but it's still baffling how this Arcana is lacking 2 spell effects, where the 2 other Arcanas released alongside it had their full effect lineup changed. And with that, we close off part 2. What do y'all think about these 4 Arcanas? Let me know in the comments below. I have been Wilson Sticks, God bless, and until next time.